June. 1998 settles gently over a small rural county in northwestern Ohio, the kind of place where graduation night feels less like an ending and more like a pause. The school gym has already been emptied, folding chairs stacked, balloons sagging in the corners. By late evening, attention shifts away from caps and gowns and toward a wide, uneven farm field just outside town, where pickup trucks and sedans line the edges of tall grass and music drifts into the dark. For the teenagers gathered there, this night carries weight. Not because anything dramatic is expected to happen, but because it feels like the last time life will be this simple. Tomorrow, everyone scatters. Jobs, colleges, responsibilities. But tonight, they are still together, still 17 and 18, still certain that nothing truly bad can touch them. Among them are 6 friends who have known each other for years. Evan Miller is 18, recently graduated, quiet but proud, especially of his red 4-door sedan. He keeps it clean, waxed, the kind of car that means independence in a town where everything is miles apart. Josh Renner, also 18, is louder, always joking, the one who knows everyone. Tyler Brooks is 17, restless, eager to prove he belongs with the older crowd. Amanda Lewis and Kelly Hart, both seniors, move easily through the group, familiar faces in a town where familiarity is everything. Brian Foster rounds them out, 18, calm, the kind of kid teachers trust. They arrive at the party separately but end up together. Music pulses from a truck bed. Someone lights a bonfire. Coolers are passed around. There's laughter, shouting, the scrape of boots in dirt. It's nothing unusual, just another rural party, indistinguishable from dozens before it. As midnight approaches, people begin to drift away. Some head home, others talk about finding food, about driving into town where the diner stays open late. Someone suggests taking the long way, down the lake road, where it's quiet and dark and the air feels cooler. It's a familiar route. Everyone knows it. Just after midnight, the 6 gather near Evan's car. Exactly what is said in those final minutes is something no one ever fully agrees on. One friend later says they were laughing, piled into the car with the careless joy of kids who feel untouchable. Another remembers a sharper edge to the moment, a brief argument about where to go next, about who should drive. The memories don't line up, they never will. What is clear is that they leave together. Evan behind the wheel, the others filling the seats, music playing softly, windows cracked open to let the warm night air in. The red sedan pulls away from the farm field and onto the gravel road, tires crunching, headlights sweeping across corn stalks and fence posts. A few people watch them go. Someone waves. Someone else barely looks up. It's an unremarkable exit, the kind that happens dozens of times every weekend. No one has a reason to memorize it. No one thinks to follow. The sedan turns onto the county road, then toward the stretch that leads past Morrow Lake. It's darker out there, no streetlights, just narrow pavement bordered by open fields and trees. Cell phone service is spotty at best. In 1998, phones are still a luxury, not something every teenager carries. Even if something went wrong, help would not be a button press away. Back in town, parents are asleep. Doors are unlocked, as they always are. Porch lights left on. There's an understanding that graduation night runs late. Kids push boundaries, but they come home. They always come home. By 2 in the morning, the party is thinning out. By 3, the field is mostly empty. Someone drives past the diner and doesn't see the red sedan in the lot. It barely registers. Maybe they went somewhere else. Maybe they went home. Dawn comes slowly. The sky lightens over rows of corn and soybeans. Birds cut through the quiet. One by one, parents wake up and notice the same thing. A bedroom untouched. A car missing from the driveway. A clock that reads later than it should. At first, there's no panic. Maybe they crashed at a friend's house. Maybe they went to breakfast somewhere else. Parents start making calls. Phones ring unanswered. A few messages are left. No one calls back. By mid-morning, concern sharpens. Evan's parents check the garage. The red sedan isn't there. Josh's mother drives past the diner, scans the parking lot, then drives the lake road herself. Slowly, eyes moving from shoulder to ditch, expecting at any moment to see the car pulled over, maybe broken down. She doesn't. By noon, the realization settles in. 6 teenagers left together. None of them came home. None of them called. No one has seen them since just after midnight. The town begins to hum with quiet activity. Parents gather in kitchens and on front lawns, exchanging fragments of information. Someone heard they were heading to the diner. Someone else heard the lake road. Someone insists they argued. Someone insists they didn't. The sheriff's office receives its first call early that afternoon. A deputy takes notes, calm, reassuring. Teenagers go missing overnight sometimes. They turn up. They get scared. They stay with friends. The deputy suggests waiting a little longer. By evening, waiting is no longer an option. Another call is made, then another. The names are written down together now, linked by circumstance. Evan Miller, Josh Renner, Tyler Brooks, Amanda Lewis, Kelly Hart, Brian Foster. A patrol car drives the familiar roads again, slower this time. Gravel shoulders, field entrances, the edges of Morrow Lake, water high from recent rain, surface smooth and dark. Nothing looks disturbed. No tire marks stand out, no broken branches, no obvious signs of an accident. As night falls for the second time, fear settles into the spaces between houses. Lights stay on, doors close. Parents sit awake, staring at phones that never ring. The belief that kids always turn up begins to crack. The first missing persons report is officially filed just after midnight, 24 hours after the 6 were last seen. Paperwork moves from one desk to another. The case is no longer informal. It has a number, a timeline, a set of unanswered questions. Somewhere in the county, a road remains empty. A lake reflects the moon, and 6 teenagers who were supposed to be home by morning are nowhere to be found. By the time the sun rises again, the town understands something it didn't the day before. This isn't a late night. This isn't teenage rebellion. Something has gone wrong. And whatever it is, it didn't leave behind anything obvious to follow. By the morning of the second day, the sheriff's office can no longer frame the situation as a misunderstanding. 6 teenagers do not simply disappear together without leaving something behind. Deputies are pulled from routine patrols and reassigned. A command post is set up in the small municipal building just off Main Street, its parking lot filling with personal trucks and borrowed radios. Maps are spread across folding tables. Names are written in marker, circled, underlined. The working theory, at least at first, is simple. Graduation night, alcohol, poor decisions. Maybe the kids are embarrassed. Maybe they ran out of gas somewhere and decided to walk. Maybe they're sleeping it off in a barn or a friend's basement, unaware of the panic they've left behind. These explanations are not just procedural defaults, they are comforts. They allow everyone involved to believe the situation is still temporary. Search teams are assembled quickly, but they are local. Volunteer fire departments. Farmers who know every ditch and culvert by memory. Neighbors in work boots and baseball caps, walking shoulder to shoulder through cornfields, pushing aside leaves taller than their heads. Crews check creek beds swollen from recent rain, stepping carefully over slick rocks and tangled brush. Abandoned barns are unlocked and searched, the smell of old hay and oil hanging in the air. Everywhere they go, they are looking for signs of life. Footprints, tire marks, anything out of place. Nothing turns up. Helicopters are discussed, then dismissed. The county budget is tight. State resources require justification. At this stage, there is no wreckage, no confirmed crash site, no evidence that anyone is injured. From the outside, it still looks like 6 teenagers who don't want to be found. As the physical search expands, another kind of search begins. one that is louder, messier, and harder to control. Rumors spread with a speed that surprises even longtime residents. Someone swears there was a fight at the party, voices raised, tempers flaring. Another insists a jealous ex-boyfriend followed the car when it left. Drugs are mentioned vaguely at first, then with growing certainty, despite no proof. Each new story grows sharper as it's repeated, details added, motives invented. A call comes in late on the third day. A clerk at a gas station nearly 20 miles away claims to have seen a group matching the teen's description early that morning. Deputies respond immediately. Security footage is reviewed. The people in the video are close in age, similar in build, but they are not the missing six. The lead collapses as quickly as it formed, leaving behind a deeper sense of unease. Parents hear everything, some of it from deputies, most of it from neighbors, from strangers, from people who mean well but don't understand the damage speculation can do. Every rumor feels personal. Every theory feels like an accusation. Morrow Lake becomes a focal point almost immediately. It is the largest body of water in the area, a man-made reservoir used primarily for irrigation. The road that runs alongside it is narrow and poorly lit. There are no guardrails along certain stretches. Locals know it can be dangerous at night, especially for drivers unfamiliar with its curves. Deputies walk the shoreline, scanning the surface of the water for oil slicks or debris. They find none. The lake is high from seasonal rain, the water murky, stirred constantly by wind and runoff. Visibility is poor. Without a clear indication that a vehicle entered the water, the decision is made not to deploy divers. Parents do not accept this easily. They ask questions that feel obvious to them and inconvenient to investigators. Why not drag the lake, just to be sure? Why not bring in sonar? Why not treat this as an accident until it's ruled out? The sheriff listens, but his answers are careful, measured. There is no evidence the car went into the water. Dragging the lake is expensive. Divers are dangerous to deploy without cause. Tire tracks near the shoreline are examined and dismissed as marks left by farm equipment that regularly moves through the area. The explanations do nothing to ease the tension. As days pass, the searches grow longer and quieter. Fewer volunteers show up. The same fields are walked again and again. Deputies begin checking farther from town, expanding the radius, following any lead no matter how thin. Each night ends the same way. No car, no kids, no answers. Inside their homes, families begin to change. Some keep the porch lights on all night, as if the missing might still come walking up the driveway. Others sit by the phone, afraid to leave the room. Sleep comes in fragments. Food goes untouched. Candlelight vigils replace search grids. People gather in the high school parking lot. Flames flickering in paper cups, faces drawn and tired. The names of the six are read aloud. There is prayer, silence, and a collective attempt to believe that attention itself might somehow bring the teens back. Behind closed doors, frustration hardens into anger. Parents push harder. They call state agencies. They contact local news. They ask why a case involving 6 missing teenagers feels so small, so contained, when their lives feel anything but. Some deputies privately share their doubts, their unease about the lake, about the road, about how easily a car could vanish there. Officially, nothing changes. By the end of the second week, the tone shifts. It is not announced. There is no meeting where the words are spoken aloud. But the way deputies talk, the way resources are allocated, the way questions are framed, all begin to signal the same thing. This is no longer a rescue. Search efforts continue, but they lose urgency. The language becomes careful, if they are found, instead of when. The possibility that the 6 are alive grows thinner with each passing hour, each sunrise that arrives without a phone call. For the families, this is the most unbearable part. Not knowing when hope is supposed to end, not being told outright, but feeling it anyway, in the pauses, in the averted eyes, in the silence after questions that no longer have comforting answers. Somewhere beneath the surface of Morrow Lake, beneath high water and years of assumption, something remains unseen. And as the town settles into a grim new normal, the fear is no longer that the 6 teenagers are lost. It is that they have been close all along, hidden by the very explanations meant to make sense of their disappearance. By the time the first anniversary arrives, the town no longer gathers in large numbers. There is no siren call for volunteers, no new grids drawn on maps. What remains is quieter, heavier. 6 missing teenagers have become 6 unanswered questions, and questions are easier to live around than answers. The case is still technically open, but it begins to cool in ways that are hard to quantify and impossible to ignore. Folders that once sat on desks are moved into cabinets. Cabinets are reorganized. Evidence bags are sealed and resealed, labels fading slightly each time they are handled. Notes that once felt urgent now read like fragments from another life. By the early 2000s, the words are finally used. Cold case. Not in a press conference, not announced to families in any formal way. It simply appears on internal paperwork. A classification that signals what everyone already feels. There is nothing new to chase. Time changes the families in different ways. One family leaves the county altogether. The house where their son grew up is sold. His bedroom, once frozen exactly as he left it, is cleared out by strangers. Neighbors notice the moving truck and understand without being told. Some departures feel like survival. Others feel like surrender. Another family does the opposite. The bedroom stays untouched. Clothes remain in the closet. Posters stay on the walls. Dust is wiped away carefully, as if disturbing the space might erase the possibility of return. Holidays are the hardest. Birthdays are worse. Each passing year adds a new layer of grief, not replacing the old ones, but stacking on top of them. One parent begins to search obsessively for meaning where none has been proven. Late nights are spent reading about disappearances, about cover-ups, about cases where authorities got it wrong. Every rumor becomes a thread worth pulling. Every theory feels preferable to the idea that nothing extraordinary happened at all. Occasionally, the phone rings. Anonymous callers claim knowledge. They say the teens were murdered. They say bodies were buried on farmland miles from town. They say people know more than they're admitting. Deputies log the calls, follow what little information is offered, drive down dirt roads, knock on doors. Each lead ends the same way. No evidence, no corroboration, nothing solid enough to move the case forward. Years later, one former deputy admits privately that the investigation in those first weeks was rushed and underfunded, that resources were thin, that assumptions were made because they had to be. Another deputy, still active, pushes back hard against that idea. He insists the truth is simpler than people want it to be, that complexity has been layered onto something basic because the basic explanation hurts too much. The disagreement never becomes public. It doesn't need to. The result is the same. Nothing changes. Morrow Lake stays where it has always been. A wide stretch of water reflecting the sky, bordered by a road people drive every day without thinking. Seasons come and go. Water levels rise and fall within normal ranges. Fishermen cast lines. Farmers draw irrigation. Children learn to drive along its edge, warned to slow down. To be careful at night. Parents of the missing ask again and again for the lake to be searched. Not out of certainty, but out of exhaustion. They need to rule it out definitively, to stop imagining what might be hidden beneath the surface. Each request is met with the same response. There is no new evidence. Dragging the lake is expensive. Divers are dangerous to deploy without cause. Sonar requires justification that no one can provide. Over time, the requests become less frequent. Not because the need disappears, but because hope wears thin. Each denial feels heavier than the last. The town learns how to avoid the subject. New families move in who only know the story vaguely, if at all. The teens' faces fade from bulletin boards and newspaper clippings yellow with age. Their names are spoken less often, and when they are, it is usually in the past tense. There are moments when the silence is broken. A documentary airs about missing persons. A drought lowers the water in nearby lakes, but not enough to change anything here. Each event sends a small ripple of attention back toward the case, then it fades again. For the families, time becomes the cruelest force of all. Not because it heals, but because it erodes. It dulls urgency. It blurs memory. It forces life to continue even when nothing feels resolved. Grief changes shape. It becomes quieter, more internal, but no less present. Somewhere in the middle of it all is the road by Morrow Lake. The same curves, the same narrow shoulders, the same absence of guardrails. People drive it every day, rarely thinking about the 6 teenagers who were last believed to be on it. Rarely thinking about how easy it is for something to disappear when no one is looking in exactly the right place. Years pass, 10, 12, 14. The case remains unsolved, suspended in a kind of permanent pause. And beneath the surface of a lake that looks unchanged from the outside, the possibility lingers that time has not erased the truth at all. It has only hidden it, waiting for the moment when the water finally pulls back far enough to stop keeping it secret. By the summer of 2012, the county has learned to live with absence. 14 years have passed since 6 teenagers vanished, and for most people, the case exists only as a distant memory, something mentioned occasionally, usually in hushed tones before conversation moves on. Life has filled in the gaps the disappearance left behind. New families live in old houses. New students walk the halls of the high school. Time has done what it always does. It has moved forward, whether anyone was ready or not. That summer, Ohio is gripped by an extreme drought. Weeks pass without meaningful rain. Lawns turn brittle and yellow, cornfields sag under the heat, creeks shrink into thin, muddy channels. Farmers watch the sky with growing concern, knowing there is nothing they can do but wait. Morrow Lake begins to change in ways people have never seen before. As a man-made reservoir used for irrigation, its water level fluctuates naturally, but never like this. Day by day, the shoreline creeps backward. Mud flats stretch wider. Old debris resurfaces. Rusted fence posts, half-buried tires, scraps of metal that have been hidden for decades reappear. Reminders of how much the water has always concealed. At first, the receding water is just another sign of the drought. People comment on it in passing. Fishermen adjust where they cast. Farmers talk about how low it's getting. No one immediately connects it to the case that has lingered unresolved for so long. Then one morning, a fisherman notices something that doesn't belong. It's a dark shape rising out of the exposed lake bed, not debris, not driftwood. It has edges that are too straight, lines too deliberate to be natural. He stands there for a long moment, staring, his mind trying to reject what his eyes are telling him. Then he backs away and makes a call. Law enforcement arrives cautiously. At first, they keep their distance, unsure of what they're looking at. As the water continues to drain and the mud dries, the shape becomes clearer. Metal, glass, a roof line, then a door. It's a car, not overturned, not broken apart, sitting upright, as if it had been placed there carefully. The color, dulled by years underwater, is still visible beneath the grime and algae. Red. The license plate is partially obscured, but enough remains to read it. The numbers match Evan Miller's sedan. For a moment, there is no sound. 14 years of questions converge into a single, undeniable answer. The place that was never fully searched. The possibility that was always dismissed. The explanation that felt too simple, too unbearable to accept. The car has been here the entire time. The response is immediate and precise. The area is secured. Additional agencies are notified. Divers are called in, not to search blindly, but to confirm what is already becoming clear. As they approach the vehicle, they move slowly, aware of how fragile the moment is, both physically and emotionally. Inside the car, they find 6 sets of remains. The news spreads faster than anyone expects. Families are contacted and asked to come to the lake. Some have waited years for this call, even if they never believed it would come. Others have spent 14 years dreading it. Now it's real. Now it's unavoidable. They gather along the shoreline as crews work carefully, deliberately. There is no rush. Every step matters. The mud clings to boots and equipment. The car is stabilized, straps secured. A crane is brought in, its presence both necessary and surreal, lifting a piece of the past out of the ground where it has been hidden for more than a decade. As the sedan rises from the lake bed, emotions break through the restraint that time has forced on everyone. Some parents cannot watch. Others cannot look away. Some collapse, grief hitting them all at once, raw and overwhelming. Others stand completely still, faces expressionless, as if movement might make the moment unbearable. Closure and devastation arrive together, inseparable. Forensic teams begin their work almost immediately. Despite the years underwater, the car has preserved much of what is inside. Submersion in cold, low-oxygen conditions has slowed decomposition. Personal items are recovered carefully: clothing, jewelry, objects that once belonged to teenagers who were never supposed to leave them behind. Identification is made through dental records, through what remains of clothing, through items parents recognize instantly. There is no doubt. Evan, Josh, Tyler, Amanda, Kelly, Brian, all accounted for, all together. Investigators finally understand why the car was never seen. At the time of the accident, the lake level was significantly higher. The banks were soft, muddy, capable of swallowing a vehicle without leaving dramatic evidence behind. There was no loud crash reported. No debris scattered along the road. The water entry would have been quiet, the car sliding in at an angle, sinking quickly into the mud below. At night, with no witnesses and no immediate indication of what had happened, the lake kept its secret. The realization is devastating in its simplicity. There was no elaborate crime, no conspiracy, no hidden villain, just a narrow road, darkness, impaired judgment, and a body of water that did exactly what it was capable of doing. As the car is transported away and the shoreline empties, the lake looks different to everyone who stands there. It is no longer just a stretch of water. It is a place where 14 years of waiting ended and where the truth finally surfaced, not because anyone solved the mystery, but because nature itself decided it was time. And as forensic reports begin to take shape, one question remains, heavier now than ever. Not where the 6 teenagers went, or what happened to them, but how such a simple explanation was able to stay hidden for so long, beneath water that no one believed held the answer. Once the car is removed from the lake and taken into secure custody, the work shifts from recovery to explanation. For the families, this phase carries a strange contradiction. For 14 years, they lived without answers. Now the answers are coming quickly, clinically, written in reports and photographs, stripped of emotion even as emotion threatens to overwhelm everything else. The forensic examination begins with the vehicle itself. It is cataloged inch by inch, mud washed away carefully so as not to destroy what little evidence remains. Despite its long submersion, the car is remarkably intact. The doors are closed. The windows are up. There is no catastrophic damage to the frame. This immediately tells investigators something important. There was no violent collision, no high-speed impact with another vehicle or object. Whatever happened, it happened quickly and quietly. Inside, the seating positions are consistent with what would be expected on a late-night drive. Evan Miller in the driver's seat, passengers distributed naturally. Some seatbelts are fastened, others are not. This detail matters, but not in the way people might expect. It doesn't point to recklessness or panic, it points to normalcy. Teenagers doing what teenagers often do on short drives late at night. There are no signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds, no trauma consistent with assault, no evidence of foul play. The car does not tell the story of violence, it tells the story of interruption. The medical examiner's findings reinforce this. Each set of remains shows the same conclusion. Drowning. There are no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, no blunt force trauma that would suggest the car struck something at high speed before entering the water. Death would not have been instantaneous, but it would have come quickly, especially in the dark, confined space of a sinking vehicle. Toxicology reports provide the next piece. Alcohol is present in Evan's system, not at a level that suggests severe intoxication, not enough to render him incapable of driving, but enough to slow reaction time, enough to blur judgment, enough to make a narrow road feel wider than it is. It is an uncomfortable detail for the families, and one that investigators handle carefully. The presence of alcohol does not assign blame. It explains vulnerability. Combined with darkness, familiarity with the road, and the relaxed confidence of youth, it becomes a critical factor. Accident reconstruction specialists analyze the tires, the undercarriage, and what remains of the lake bed. Marks in the mud, preserved beneath layers of sediment, indicate that the car left the road at a shallow angle. This was not a sharp turn gone wrong. It was more likely a gradual drift, the kind that happens when attention shifts for just a moment. Investigators begin to reconstruct the likely sequence of events. The group is driving along the lake road, music playing, conversation moving easily, laughter maybe, a joke, a moment of distraction. Evan misses the subtle curve of the road. There is no guardrail to correct the mistake. The shoulder gives way to soft ground. The car slides, not crashes, into the water. Because the banks are muddy and sloped, there is no dramatic splash, no explosive sound. The vehicle enters smoothly, the way something heavy does when the ground simply gives up beneath it. Within seconds, the car is submerged. Within minutes, it sinks deeper, settling into the mud at the bottom of the lake. At night, with no witnesses and no visible disturbance on the surface, the disappearance leaves almost nothing behind. This is the crucial finding, the one that explains everything that followed. At the time of the accident, water levels at Morrow Lake were several feet higher than they were when the car was discovered. The shoreline was closer to the road. The mud banks were saturated. Any tire tracks that might have been visible were quickly erased by water movement and sediment. By the time morning came, the lake looked exactly as it always had. No oil slick formed on the surface. No debris floated free. The car did not break apart. It simply vanished. In 1998, there was no routine use of sonar in local missing persons searches. Dive teams were not deployed without a clear indication of water entry. And without evidence, the lake was never treated as the primary scene. The explanation is devastating because it is logical. Every missed opportunity, every decision made in good faith lines up with this single outcome. The teens didn't run away. They didn't meet with violence. They didn't disappear into some unknown place. They followed a road they had likely driven before and made one mistake that could not be undone. For the families, this realization lands differently for each of them. Some feel relief, a terrible kind, but relief nonetheless. The years of imagining something worse can finally end. Others feel anger at the road, at the lake, at the decisions made that night, at the decisions made afterward. And some feel something harder to name, a quiet grief for how ordinary it all was. There is no villain to hold accountable, no one to confront. No trial, no dramatic confession, just a chain of small factors that, together, became irreversible. Investigators close the case with findings that are thorough and precise. Accident, drowning. Contributing factors include alcohol, road conditions, lack of guardrails, and low visibility. Everything fits. Nothing is missing. And yet, even with answers, there is a lingering weight that doesn't lift. Because for 14 years, the truth was there, beneath the surface. Close enough to drive past every day. Close enough to point to on a map. And no one saw it, not because they didn't care, but because it didn't look like anything at all. As reports are finalized and evidence is archived one last time, the question shifts. It is no longer what happened, it is what happens next. How a town absorbs a truth that arrived too late to change the outcome, but just in time to rewrite the story it has been telling itself for more than a decade. And as the families prepare to bury their children, not as missing persons, but as something painfully real, the lake remains where it has always been, quiet again, holding nothing now, having finally given up the only secret it ever kept. In the weeks that follow the recovery, the county moves through a kind of collective reckoning. For 14 years, the disappearance had lived in the space between speculation and silence. Now, with the truth laid out plainly, there is no room left for either. What remains is consequence. Law enforcement addresses the case publicly for the first time in years. Not to reopen wounds, but to acknowledge them. Officials speak carefully, aware that words cannot undo what time has already done. They admit what many families suspected all along. Early assumptions shaped the search. Limited resources narrowed its scope. The absence of obvious evidence led to decisions that, in hindsight, feel painfully incomplete. There is no attempt to excuse it, only an acknowledgement that the investigation did not evolve as it should have, and that the lake should have been treated differently from the beginning. The Sheriff's Department announces changes to its procedures. Any future missing persons case involving vehicles and nearby bodies of water will trigger immediate water searches, regardless of initial evidence. Sonar will be requested sooner. Dive teams will be deployed earlier. Protocols are rewritten not as an abstract improvement, but as a direct response to 6 names that can no longer be ignored. For the families, accountability brings mixed emotions. Some find comfort in knowing that what happened to their children may prevent the same fate for others. Others struggle with the knowledge that change came only after it was too late for them. Both reactions exist side by side, neither canceling the other out. Grief, long frozen in uncertainty, begins to move again. Funerals are held, some private, some public. In each one, the teenagers are spoken of not as missing persons, but as who they were: friends, students, sons, daughters. Laughter returns briefly, woven through tears, as stories are told that had been waiting years to be shared. Parents talk about what it was like to live in suspension, to wake up every day unsure whether hope was still allowed. They talk about bedrooms that stayed untouched for more than a decade, about birthdays marked in silence, about the way time kept moving while they remained stuck on one night in June. Moving forward does not mean moving on. It means learning how to carry the weight without letting it define every moment that follows. Near Morrow Lake, a small memorial takes shape. A plaque, flowers, 6 names etched permanently into something that will outlast memory. People stop there now, even those who never knew the teens personally. It becomes a place of quiet reflection, a reminder that ordinary places can hold extraordinary loss. The road alongside the lake changes too. Guardrails are installed where there were none before. Warning signs appear, their messages direct and impossible to ignore. Slow down, sharp curve ahead. Locals notice the difference immediately. It is subtle, but it matters. Every change feels like an admission, not of guilt, but of reality. The town has to confront a truth that is both sobering and unsettling. There was no hidden plot, no unknown predator, no grand mystery waiting to be solved by a single missing clue. What happened was a chain of small human decisions, none of them malicious, all of them familiar. A night of celebration, alcohol that felt manageable, a road driven countless times before, darkness, a momentary lapse in attention, geography that offered no forgiveness. Together they were enough. In the years that follow, the story is told differently. Not as a disappearance, but as a caution. Parents talk to their children about it. Drivers slow down near the lake. People remember not because they are afraid, but because they understand. Understanding does not bring comfort, but it brings clarity. The lake itself becomes something else entirely. Once a symbol of rumor and unease, it is now a place of quiet acknowledgement. People fish there again. They walk along its edge. They look out over the water and think about how long it held what no one thought to search for. It is no longer a question of what the lake took. It is a reminder of what it kept. 6 lives did not vanish into nothing. They were not claimed by mystery or erased by time. They were missed by a search that never fully turned its attention in the right direction, missed by a moment when assumptions outweighed imagination. The difference matters. As years continue to pass, the case settles into history, but not obscurity. It becomes a lesson written into policy, into landscape, into memory. A reminder that answers do not always hide far away. Sometimes they are close, quiet, and waiting for someone to look again. And on nights when the road near Morrow Lake grows dark and still, there is nothing left to search for there. Only the knowledge of what happened and the responsibility to remember why it must never be allowed to happen the same way again.